The Wild Palm Beaches is brought to you by Discover the Palm Beaches.
Wildlife conservation is a necessary contribution to the preservation of Mother Earth. Wildlife conservation is the practice of protecting plant and animal species and their habitats. As part of the world's ecosystems, wildlife provides balance and stability to nature's processes. The goal of wildlife conservation is to educate people and ensure the survival of these species. On this episode of the Wild Palm Beaches, we're going to get up close and personal with capybaras, sloths, anteaters, lemurs, tortoises, and more. Oh!
Ecotourism is big business in Palm Beach County. From lions to loggerheads, our resident wildlife population is one of the things that makes the Palm Beaches a special place to visit. Aquatic adventures let you see our majestic sea turtles and tropical fish in living color, while our zoos, wildlife parks, and natural areas give you an up-close look at everything from rhinos to alligators. It is here that nature is on full display. It's like nowhere else in the world. As one of the largest counties east of the Mississippi, we have lots of room to explore the wild animal encounters that are seemingly endless in the Palm Beaches. Ever wished you could swim with dolphins or get up close to a manatee? In the Palm Beaches, you can. From the Florida Everglades and the Loxahatchee River to the Intracoastal Waterway and the Atlantic Ocean, take a walk on the wild side and discover the great outdoors in a tropical paradise. Join me, James Currie, as we discover the Wild Palm Beaches.
Have you ever wondered what happens when an animal roadside attraction closes, or when a cash-strapped animal dealer has too much inventory to feed, or when a cute sulcata tortoise outgrows its owner's enclosure and becomes a 235-pound leviathan? Here in Western Palm Beach County, Florida, the Wellington Conservation Center is home to unwanted, abandoned, and injured animals. And they specialize in conservation of South American exotics that are endangered from habitat loss and poaching.
So we are a rescue and rehome facility for exotic animals. We take in all sorts of reptiles, birds, small mammals mostly. We take in animals from all sorts of things, whether they're someone's pet that grew out of their space, they no longer wanted to pay the vet bills, so they give us a call. We try and help out all the animals that we can. Even when we can't place them here ourselves, we'll try and find them a place somewhere that they can take the animal. But we're all about providing healthy, happy homes for the animals for the rest of their life. So we guarantee a spot for that animal until they pass over the Rainbow Bridge. And then we also have conservation breeding programs for 4 species here. So we are trying to breed black and white ruffed lemurs, red ruffed lemurs, southern tamanduas, and 2-toed sloths. My favorite part about working with animals is that every day is different. You never go through the same day more than once, which keeps things interesting. And the animals are always going to teach you something that you didn't know the day before. It's also really special to see the connection that especially kids have with the animals on the tours. I'm always impressed by how young kids can sometimes have more faith in the animals and trust than their adults do. So it's really fun to see. And especially with the summer camp that we run, and then we're trying to put in a petting zoo and an aviary. So we're all about getting the kids in with the animals just so that the next generation has that interaction, and then hopefully they can inspire people to do things like we do here. I've always been interested in conservation. I went to college for animal behavior, physiology, and neurobiology. There's some animals here that are critically endangered. If we don't have them in captivity, there's a good chance that they will go extinct and then nobody gets to see them. So it's really important for us to preserve the animals that we have so that people can see them. I mean, we're losing thousands and hundreds of thousands of species every year, and you want to change it to at least slow it down and then hopefully turn it around. I mean, there always has to be a place for animals. It's important to nurture or respect the environment, not just the animals, but the plants, and then taking care of the oceans especially, and water. Fresh water is pretty important, especially in Florida. You're not going to find a subtropical climate in the United States that's better than the Palm Beaches. In the Palm Beaches, you can have animals that you can't really display properly in further north states. So in Palm Beach, you can have the exotics that like hot weather, like the lemurs, the sloths, the foxes that we have here. They don't do too well in northern facilities just because you have to keep them in smaller areas. You have to have heat lamps on them constantly. In Florida, generally speaking, you can keep them outside with little to no temperature assistance. It's a really special place. Some of these animals here, they're perfect for this environment, and they're not perfect for anywhere else. So especially the capybaras, I mean, their native range used to include Florida. It's a really, really good place, especially for the warmer climate animals. So we do tours every day except for Tuesday. They're at 10:30 and 12:30 and 2:30. It's about an hour and 15 minutes, and it's highly interactive. So you get to feed and pet the bull, feed and pet the pony, you pet the capybaras, pet the porcupines, pet the anteater, feed the lemurs, pet the sloths. The tours are good for all ages. I've had little kids as young as 2 years old come in here and do everything that we offer. I've even had elderly people come and tell me that it's the most they've learned about anything in their entire life. So it's good for everybody. Even if you don't like animals, people still come and enjoy everything that we have to offer. Come visit us at Wellington Conservation Center and get wild in the Palm Beaches.
The Wild Palm Beaches is brought to you by Discover the Palm Beaches.
By conserving wildlife, we're ensuring that future generations enjoy the natural world and the incredible species within it.
It's time to get wild in the Palm Beaches.
The Wellington Conservation Centre is home to a variety of animals from all across the world. Occupants range from rare 4-pound Saharan pale foxes to a 2,200-pound orphan named KJ, who is perhaps the world's most affectionate Hereford steer.
So we call KJ our 2,000-pound dog because you can pet him like a dog, he sheds like a dog, and he slobbers like a dog. They taught him stop, couldn't teach him sit, and then they called him KJ because he was raised by two farmers' kids, Kevin and James. So they had to raise KJ because his mom died during childbirth, but they had him for a couple years. A woman visited with them, fell in love with them. She wanted him as a pet, so she got him as a pet. She had him for a couple more years. She got sick, couldn't take care of KJ anymore, so Kevin and James placed him here, but he's about 15 years old now. And they can get up to 30, so he's still pretty young. So KJ is somewhere between 2,000 and 2,200 pounds. He's a mix, so he's half Black Angus and then half Hereford cattle. He doesn't look anything at all like a Black Angus. Those guys are jet black. He looks a whole lot of Hereford, so that's this red-brown color, and then the curly hair that he has on top of his head. He is a bull, even though they have horns, so horns are a genetic trait. If the mom and dad don't have horns, the kids aren't going to have horns. He's definitely a fan favorite, even though he's not the most exotic animal. He's super friendly, very unique. People can't believe that he's the way he is, even though he's a bull. So he's definitely up there in terms of favorites. This is a Brazilian porcupine, so they look a little bit different than the porcupines that you typically see at zoos. Most of the time you see the North American or the African crested. Both those species live on the ground. These guys, they live in the trees and they just have quills on their body, which the other ones usually have quills and hair. So it makes them look a little bit different, but they're adapted for the tree lifestyle. The one obviously big feature here is the tail on them. So it is prehensile, which just means they can grab things with it. They'll put most of their body weight on that tail if they need to. Most of the time, they just use it to anchor themselves into the trees. Nocturnal, so not very good vision. The nose is gonna be how they get around. So it's really, really big, really bulbous, and then they have sensory hairs all over their body, and they can just feel their way around in the dark. No porcupine shoots their quills out of their body. So what these guys do is they roll up into a ball, and then if anything were to bother them, they'd just puff up. And then if anything tried again, they'd get a face full of quills and not the actual porcupine itself. They grow and shed their quills like we grow and shed hair. So they're usually all over the place here on the ground. The outside is the side that has the barbs on it. So if you were to get pricked by one, it ends up staying in your skin. Luckily, these guys, they don't have really strong barbs, so they can pull out pretty easily. The other species, the African and North American, those guys have really strong barbs. So it'll take about 10 pounds of pressure to remove those. So it's definitely not something you want to get quilled by. This is Bonnie, so this is our younger one. She's about 4 years old, and then Pickles is in the back. We got them both from the same guy. He's an exotic importer. They come over with hundreds of animals at a time, and when they get left with one or two of a species, they find it hard to sell to zoos, so they'll start looking for private buyers and sellers. So Pickles sat in his inventory for a couple years. He eventually just decided to find her a home instead of trying to sell her off. And then Bonnie came to us in July of 2020. She was originally going to be packaged as part of a breeding pair to a European zoo, but when COVID happened, he wasn't able to ship them over to Europe, so he sat with them for about 6 or 7 months before giving us another call. They're actually pretty friendly, so on the tours, people can come in here and pet them. They don't mind. They're really nice animals.
The Wild Palm Beaches is brought to you by Discover the Palm Beaches.
This is Taco. He's part of a pairing we have here called Taco Bell. This is a southern tamandua, also known as a lesser anteater. So they're the smaller type, and they're going to spend most of their time in the trees. So we got another prehensile tail on them, but this one's a lot stronger. So they can put all of their body weight on the tail and hang from it alone, which is the only animal we have at the farm that can do that. So it is pretty cool. The front arms on these guys, that's going to be where they have their major tool. So you can see they have one really big middle finger, and that's what they use for everything that they do. So all the tree branches in this enclosure, they're stripped of their bark. There's holes all over the ground every morning, and that's just from these guys going to work. But the forearms on them are strong enough that if there were any insects in the branches, Taco would be able to rip them in half and get to the meat of the tree. And these guys, they're eating 2,000 to 3,000 insects a day, which is a lot, and they always leave something left over, so they never eat all of your insects, which is why you don't want to have them as your pest control, but it's a way for them to farm the insects, so they leave something behind, and then they know that they can go back at a later date and they'd be able to get another snack, so it's pretty smart. So we're looking at a Patagonian cavy or Patagonian mara. They're the 4th largest rodent in the world, and they got the nickname God's Joke because they didn't know if he was making a rabbit or kangaroo. They're native to the Patagonia area, so that's going to be Argentina and a little bit of Chile. They have a really odd body shape, and then they have these really skinny legs, but the legs are actually very, very good at what to do. So they can run over 18 miles an hour. They're capable of jumping 6 feet into the air, and then these guys are excellent diggers. We actually have 2 of them here at the farm. We got them both from a nearby sanctuary that was running out of herd space. This one is friends with Jasper, and then our other one is actually quite the bully, so he had to make friends with our ducks. They are close relatives of the capybara, so they're part of the Cavidae family of rodents. So this is Julia and then her baby. They're 2-toed sloths, so you can tell by the front, not by the back. They've got 2 toes in the front, and then they're going to have 3 toes in the back. Obviously a very slow-moving animal, so the top speed on them is around 0.93 miles per hour. Typically they're moving around at about 0.19, that's kind of their cruising speed. But on top of being slow movers, they're going to have the slowest digestive system out of any mammal. We're talking 40 to 50 days from eating it to excreting it, so they only have to poop once a week. So she's got a 10-month-old on her right now. Those babies are with their mom for the first 10 to 12 months of their life, and they're completely dependent on them. So you're always gonna find them on or near the mom. The first month when they're born, that's the most important for them development-wise. When they're born, the feet and hands are fully formed. The eyes are wide open, so they're immediately able to grab onto the mom's fur. What they can't do is hang upside down yet, so you only ever see them on the chest or on their stomach, which is also where they nurse, so it works out. After about a month or so, they're completely done nursing, and then they start to steal the food out of mom's mouth, and that's how they learn what is safe to eat in the wild, because if the mom is eating it, they know it's gonna be safe for them later on. And then shortly after that, they'll start doing everything on their own. We've had 3 babies so far, Otto, Sid, and then this one. So they've all been boys. The fur, it grows in the direction of their gravity. She's in pretty much perfect example form for you. It goes legs to body, and then head to body, and then belly to spine. She's just a little bit different than us because we're head to toe. They've also gotten rid of most of the muscle mass in their arms and legs for extending them and pushing off of things. So the arms in the front, that's what they use to move around with, so that's where all your muscle's gonna be. Those legs in the back, they're severely diminished, so they're really just for hanging. But for an animal this size, they end up weighing about half as much as they should, and they're more efficient at grabbing and pulling, so they can pretty much hang for an endless amount of time, which is really good because it's all they ever do. This is Angelina. She's a wild hog. They are found in Florida, so you might see them running around the side of the road. The males will be the ones they call a boar. They're gonna be the ones with those big tusks. So they are notorious for causing damage to crops and farmlands. They use that nose like a bulldozer, going after the roots of plants. So there was a farm near here. They had a problem with the wild hogs, and they ended up killing off an entire family of them. But when they found an infant Angelina, they didn't have the heart to kill her, so they rushed her here immediately. Angelina was actually nursed in the house, raised with the dogs, so she's house trained, which was nice. And then Angelina is also harness trained, so she can still go on walks to this day. These are an invasive species to Florida. They were originally brought over by the conquistadors in the 1500s, and they kept them as a quasi-livestock, so they didn't really keep track of the populations. They just knew where to hunt them, and the population ballooned. So there's a whole bunch down here in the southeastern United States, and then to complicate things even more, they introduced the Eurasian hog about 200 years ago. So what the United States has now is sort of a mix between the two. You never know which one you're gonna get or if it's an in-between. They've definitely established themselves down here. These are the capybara. They're the world's largest rodent, and they got the name capybara because it means master of the grasses. So it's pretty fitting for them because this is the world's largest rodent, and they're naturally grazers. They're also semi-aquatic animals, so the fur is really wiry, kind of feels like a broom. The feet are also webbed up to the middle knuckle. And those are both water adaptations, so they're gonna do everything they can in the water: eat, sleep, poop, mate, pee in the water. The way that they sleep is they just keep their nose up, and then they're gonna submerge the rest of their bodies, and then they can fully submerge themselves for up to about 5 minutes at a time. They're herd animals, so you're typically seeing them in groups of 10 to 20. There's usually one alpha male at the top, a bunch of females, and a bunch of younger ones. But when the young boys reach reproductive age, they'll get kicked out of the group, or they have to fight for their spot. So we got Leonardo from the North Georgia Zoo. He just got a little bit too old for his group there. He's about 6 now, so he's not gonna get any bigger. The scent gland is only going to be found on the males prominently, so it's that bald section on his nose. Lulu really doesn't have one because she's a girl, but it is still there, so they'll use it to mark any territory when they're ready to breed. We got Lulu here now. A little over 3 years ago, she came to us from a sanctuary in Tennessee that had run out of herd space. The biggest capybara on record was a female at 201 pounds, so they can get almost twice this weight, which is crazy to think about. They love attention, probably as much as any other animal. A lot of people ask if you can keep them as house pets after visiting with us, but they don't make good house pets at all. They're very docile animals. You'll see them a lot at zoos. You just typically don't get this close, and you almost never get to pet them, but they're pretty friendly. So this is Daisy. She's a black and white rough lemur baby that was born here May 18th, 2021. This is one of our conservation breeding programs, so the black and whites are a critically endangered species. There's only about 1,000 to 10,000 left in the wild, and the population is declining. They are native to Madagascar, as are all lemurs, and They floated over to the island about 65 million years ago. When they got there, it was pretty much uninhabited, so they took over. So there's over 100 different species of lemurs now. They all look different. This is actually going to be the second largest in their family, and they are the loudest lemur overall. So they make a call, it's called their roar shriek. Super loud, super obnoxious. They usually use it to warn of predators, but our lemurs typically will do it to get attention. So you might hear it when you come here for a tour. It's the loudest lemur, and it's the second loudest primate in the world. So their calls can be heard up to 2.5 kilometers away. This is Raj and Charlie. They are two tortoises, but they're both best buddies. Someone's son originally bought these two before he had to move to North Carolina. They don't do too well in the cold up there, so he ended up leaving them with his mom in Florida for a couple months. She wanted to find them a permanent home, so she chose us back in July of 2020. In my left hand is Charlie. He is a red-footed tortoise. You could probably guess why they call him that, but they all have the red spotted feet. Most of them have the yellow and orange spotted head, and then they all have that brightly colored center in each of their scutes. They are native to northern South America and found pretty much anywhere that's not covered completely in water. So they're all over the place, but people have been over collecting them recently down there, so their population is in decline, and they're now listed as vulnerable by the IUCN. His buddy is Raj. That's an Indian star tortoise. There's only 2 species of star tortoises in the world, the Indian star and the Burmese star. Both populations are declining rapidly because they are very beautiful tortoises, and as a result, they're very popular in the exotic pet trade. They're all gonna have the star pattern, so what changes is how many lines they get, how thick those lines are, and then how well they line up. But Raj has definitely got a nice looking shell on him, and then the underside is going to be the opposite side of the checkerboard, so it is pretty cool. He's only about 4 years old, so they'll get up to about 8 to 10 inches for the boys, and then it's 10 to 12 for the girls. Charlie is around 11, so he's pretty much filled out his shell.
To help protect wildlife, it's important to understand how species interact within their ecosystems and how they're affected by environmental and human influences. Wildlife conservation aims to preserve the diversity of nature, the diversity that is essential for all life on Earth.
The Wellington Conservation Centre is helping with these efforts through conservation and education right here in the wild Palm Beaches.